Dr. Rodney Suwale is an associate professor of pharmacy at the Dean College of Health Sciences, Wingate University in Wingate, North Carolina. Dr. Suwale has also taught at the Appalachian College of Pharmacy and Western New England University College of Pharmacy. He earned his Doctor of Philosophy degree from Mercer University in Atlanta, Georgia, Master of Science in Biopharmacy from King's College. And last but not least, Dr. Margaret Wendapole is an educator with the DeKalb County School System in Georgia and is a graduate of Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. Let's hear it. Dr. Wendapole is passionate about promoting access to education to vulnerable girls in Africa. She's an active leader with the African Sisters for Information, Knowledge, and Empowerment. So before we start, I think what we'll do is let's quickly go around and get your views. So we can just go from get your views on what you see as the future of education. And then we'll jump in from there. By the way, this is an interactive session. So as they're talking, once everybody has given their comments, I'm going to open it up to your thoughts based on either things that they've said, and if I have a question myself, I'm going to chime right in. And Chita, where is she? She's back over there. She's going to come around with the microphone. So put your hand up. She sees you. We'll try to organize it in such a way that it's not causing an issue. She has a white system, so don't worry. The microphone will be white between speakers. Okay? Just to let that to everybody know. So we're going to start. We'll go down the line.
So I'll get things started. Is this
I think you're wrong.
It's on, we hear you.
It's on.
Yeah, you're wrong. Just lift it closer to you.
So, from my perspective, as far as education, I think COVID has been a game changer, obviously. But in terms of how we actually communicate with learners and how we actually Because I'm always used to having a clip around my ear and
you can tell he's a teacher, right?
Yeah. So anyway, COVID has been a game changer of basically leveraging the actual, I would say, all the methods of teaching, how to communicate information, how to get learners to actually understand and to actually try to decipher, because at no time, there hasn't been a time ever in history when we have been actually exposed to so much information. As learners, both as teachers and as professors, and also as scientists, there's never been more information available to us. But the problem is, I don't think there's been also a generation where we've had actually more problems and difficulties in actually distilling this information to actually make it usable. And I think that is the issue that we will find going forward, abilities to actually distill that information and actually make it usable and actually to make it actionable information. So that's a generalized view of how I look at the future of education. If we can get there, then I think we'll be on a great path. And this is really both, whether we're talking about American education or whether we're talking about education in the third world.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Hello. My perspective as far as education is, I'm going to sort of tag in with COVID. Because of COVID, what bottom line is education or schooling, pretty much the end game is economics, right? It's economics, creating jobs, people getting employed. That's why we go to school. So education at this point, because of COVID, has sort of many stakeholders in that process for economics kind of look at things in a different way, okay? So for example, I work here in the state of Georgia. Georgia, they depend on test scores from the schools in order to determine, let's say, graduation rates, college, how many students are going to college, which impacts economics. So because the test scores last year because of COVID, everyone was at home, parents were at home, and so when they did the test online, parents were behind the kids, pretty much, and telling the kids the answers. So, the test scores were like, everybody was testing in the 90th percentile. I'm like, what? I know Johnny cannot read. So because of economics, the government had to make a decision. Okay, it's like, wait, this is not us. So they just disqualified all the scores last year. Okay, disqualified the test scores. Okay, again, economics, you might not know this, but the prison system is very dependent on test scores. And you ask why. If the third grade test scores pretty much determine how many prisons are going to be built. And because it's a school-to-prison pipeline is part of that whole system. So because, they want to build stuff, if the test scores, if everybody's doing great, there's no way they can use that to project how many prisons to build and so on. So the state made that decision, okay, we can throw those test scores out of the window. Now, at the local level, you have the administrators who also had to make a decision because of now technology, what. And funny enough, a lot of people had to be fired, okay, because now you have technical ability that doesn't need people to actually do those things. So unemployment among educators kind of went up. Okay, so it impacts everything that we did. But of course, the most important thing in this whole chain are the students, okay, the people who are actually in the classroom. And they are actually suffering because now you have what you call learning loss. Because parents are doing work for them, the kids don't know how to read, they don't know how to do this and that. So it becomes a real serious problem. So therefore, it's been 2 years, 2020, 2021, now 2022. So the kids are lacking in terms of acquisition of knowledge, which ultimately in the future is going to impact the economy of this country or any country in that respect. Okay? So it's really...
Dr. Mandapoli, I'm sorry to cut you off. I would like to move on to discuss. By the way, a lot of meat. We're going to get back to it.
All right, great. So I'll stop right here.
We're going to get back to it. I apologize for that.
And hopefully what I'm going to say is going to build a bit on what you're saying, Dr. Mandapoli, is that especially as the world seems to be looking at technology to solve a lot of the weaknesses in our education systems, we cannot forget the children. We cannot forget the individual child and what's happening at home, what's happening in their communities, all the challenges that they're facing. We cannot forget that they need social education. We can't forget that they need critical thinking skills, that they need innovation and creativity, that they need leadership development. So as we look to technology, to solve a lot of these problems, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you put a piece of technology in front of a child, and Jelani, I'm looking at you, with a great teacher on the other end of the tablet, right, who's teaching an incredible curriculum. If that child is not having doors open to overcome all the other challenges in their life, that tablet's not going to go to very good use. So for me, the future of education has to look at the child and the children and the students as equally as we're looking to technology to move forward. Thanks.
Is concerned, I'm going to really drill down to Zambia. So the past 3 years I've been going to Zambia. Every Christmas I spend Christmas in Zambia. However, this year, of course, I had to pay attention to my boss. My wife, she says, you've been leaving me alone. So there she is, and she's really enjoying herself. So when I look at education in Zambia, it's really archaic. It is Eurocentric. It is still based on colonial curriculum. And so there's a dire need for us all to pull together to try to contribute in terms of changing our education system. We have technology, we're talking about technology. Technology changes each and every day. Our teaching should not be static. It has to respond according to the demands of the workforce.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I want to thank all of you for those opening thoughts. Before we continue with anything, any questions, any thoughts on what has been shared? Anything you kind of want anybody on the panel to share some more information about?
We have questions, Dr. Wendapole. Do you think, I think in this society, test scores have been criticized for a long time. Since now there's a precedent for doing away from them, do you think that they will end up going away since they disadvantage poor communities, especially Black and brown communities?
Test scores? I don't think so. I think it's going to be, around. It might be modify some things.
Can you use your mic, please?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I don't think it's going to go away. It might be modified, but I don't think it's going to go away.
Thank you. So, just to say, technology, I don't believe is the best thing, but it is one of the tools. I don't think all kids aren't created equal. They're different learning styles. I use me as an example. I'm a kinesthetic learner, which is not really well done in school. They're usually, just a visual learner, sometimes auditory learner. So my question to you is, there are different opinions of where we're going, but one thing is for sure, there's not a one-size-fits-all. So where do you actually see this going? So obviously, as COVID's shown that technology does have its place in education. Can it replace the social interaction, the leadership, everything you see? No, but it's definitely one of the tools to equip that. So where do you see that going? And two, just to play the other angel advocate, the other side of the expression, in the US, there's been education inflation, so to speak, where grades are given that don't deserve it. Using your example as, my brother's a teacher in Baltimore. He actually has taken screenshots of parents taking the test and reported it, and they won't invalidate the test. He literally has recordings of it. They're like, our scores are high, we're gonna keep these. And so that's, for whatever reason, they won't invalidate the test. But by the same token, if you look in the US, there's the other side of the equation. There's a lot of people that have education that doesn't help them be economically viable. Either you're getting a degree that is not conducive to what you spend for it, or look at retail. 1 out of 3 people working in retail have bachelor's degrees. So they're working next to someone who does not have a degree, doesn't have the debt from that degree, that they're not no longer suffer for. So I'm just curious in your approach of those two questions. So there is education, it is valuable. There's a quote by a Japanese philosopher that's, hopefully I get it right, but there's no difference between anyone when we come into the world. We're all created equal. Therefore, any distinction comes down to education in the future. So I kind of killed that quote, but it's for the most there. So I'm just curious the panel's opinion on
Is that for anybody on the panel?
that. Anyone on the panel. Or you could talk to Julianne, since she pointed at me here. That's why.
And of course, anything that I speak to is coming from a very localized context of Kofioi in Zambia, but perhaps I can build a bit on Dr. Siame is, I'd be eager to see how we can use this pandemic for total overhauls, honestly, because yes, technology has a huge role to play, right? How can we have a total overhaul of the curriculum in Zambia so that it's actually speaking to the needs of the country and the needs of the globe, right? How can we use this as an opportunity for total overhaul? And it has to work symbiotically with so much. Again, specifically in Zambia, you're looking at a teaching workforce that's motivated for the wrong reasons, often. Don't have the, even if they're motivated for the right reasons to be in the teaching force, they don't have the resources that they need to be good teachers. So how do we use this as an opportunity, honestly, to overhaul this with all the different components? Technology being one of them, looking at that child and all the challenges that they face in their community, in their homes, in their households, curriculum. So I would look, honestly, I don't think I have the answer, I just have a lot of questions as to how can we use this as an opportunity and not leave any kids behind and not forget them in all of this.
So, to kind of further illustrate to your point, when pandemic hit, I was on the panel at my institution in terms of looking at how technology was going to be used. We had to be very, very careful, intentional, such that faculty members, even though they're professors, they've been professors for many, many years, they still had to go through professional development that addressed those various needs of learners. Also, to make it a little bit more personable, such that technology has power to allow you to be with your students, to talk to them in person, rather than sending them out there on the internet or whatever system that you're using without your presence. I think if we create presence to our students, there's that notion of social interaction with our students. At times it works, other times it doesn't because of disparities, again, in communities. That means that the country, the education system, needs to look at the platform of education and how it is being offered across the country, not just here in America, but also in Zambia. And I'm going to illustrate a little bit more on the Zambian side.
Okay. So I'll just interject as far as from the perspective of the type of degree or education that a person gets. To me, the way I feel is that there should be certain criteria from the time that a student or child or learner starts in their education. For example, simple things like critical thinking should start from elementary school, from pre-K. You know, students should be allowed to develop that kind of thinking so that it doesn't matter whether you graduate with an English degree or philosophy degree or medicine or whatever it is. If you're a critical thinker, you're more prepared to really tackle all the challenges that you'll probably face. And I think it's just emphasizing certain criteria. And as far as technology is concerned, because I've been teaching in graduate programs for the last 10 years, the basic switch over during COVID was not a great leap. Basically, it was just, and because we use distant campuses anyway, all it was just adding in tools such as Zoom, where you actually got to interact with your students simultaneously, many students simultaneously, on a level that I usually wouldn't in a class with about 100 or so students. So there was gives and takes. Obviously, with technology, there's always that interaction, personal interaction, and also the socializing feature of education as a whole. Those things were obviously missed. But anyway, that's my personal take.
Thank you so much.
Hi, the question is for the entire panel. Are you all of the opinion that the curriculum needs to change in Zambia? And if so, are you proposing we follow a certain model, or are we creating a whole new thing? that's customized to Zambia?
I'll go ahead and
Who wants
jump
to say something?
Okay, I believe that it needs to be customized to Zambia, but I believe that we need to pick from some of the best curricula in the world that I believe. For example, look at certain curricula for content, for example, countries like Singapore for the STEM, countries like South Korea, countries like the US for its ability to create an education system that creates critical mass, because our colonial education system is very elitist. It produces very few, maybe they're extremely brilliant people, but will never create critical mass to actually develop a country. And that's the way I look at it. We need to pick and choose, basically create our own customized curriculum.
I agree with Rodney here. And one thing that sort of bothers me is this lack of creativity. We're very creative people. But in education, you don't see that creativity. So it's like, Bloom's taxonomy, you have what? Acquiring knowledge, understanding. It's like you stop at understanding. Instead of, putting the kids up to that highest level, which is creativity. How do you use what you have learned to create something new? So that's something that I would add to what you just said, is to emphasize that, the students get to that level of creativity, and then we'll be, doing things like Singapore is doing, because we'll be up there. Yeah, I take it.
I think in addition to customizing the curriculum, we cannot forget the teachers as well. I'm all about the people, if you guys haven't noticed. We can't forget the teachers. Zambia actually introduced a new curriculum in 2016, right? Went to competency-based curriculum. There were no teacher trainings, and there were no additional resources. So, absolutely, does the curriculum need to change? Yes. But we cannot forget the teachers as well. We can't just change it and introduce it and poof, the teachers are supposed to be able to teach it well.
So, very briefly, I 100% agree with you that we cannot forget about teachers. Teachers need to continue learning. They have to learn and respond to the demands of today's workforce. Let me spare this point.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. I have a question. So we've talked a little bit about, the children and not leaving them behind. How are your institutions responding to young people who are choosing not to participate in the traditional education system? People who are going to college, and how you partner with the business community to still prepare leaders to join there. Because I just did a risk assessment at one of my clients, and the number one risk was people. People don't want to go to work, people don't want to do things traditionally. But how are universities collaborating with the business to continue to bridge that pipeline of, from high school to some sort of skill to the workforce? And then also, we talked about people learning, at the embassy, people learning how to do things new. How do you encourage this group and those leaders to continue to sharpen their skills and do better? How can they go about, finding out the gaps and figuring out how to acquire those skills? I know it was a lot of questions.
So I will respond at the college level, the university level. During my tenure as provost and vice president for academic affairs, one of the things that I challenged the departments, the deans, was to make sure that all our students, our graduates, they had internships. Even if their disciplines do not call for internships, we had to connect them with businesses. So much so that by the time once they're connected with, they do their internship, by the time they complete their studies, they are hired right there on spot. So I think there has to be a seamless connection between universities and colleges. I can only address universities and colleges. At high school, I'm a little bit short-handed.
Okay, I wanted to, she got me chomping at the bit because that question has been a question that bothers me, having been, a proprietary school vocational trade person. So I feel, and I'm going to point this to you, the challenge to me is that I think we've had this education system that says it's almost like a warehouse system, right? It's a factory. You have a problem. We tell kids, hey, you know what, look at this problem, solve it. The answer is at the back of the book, but don't look. Right? But don't look. And we do that through their education. And then the other thing that happens is somehow the model that you're talking about, Dr. Siajina, is actually the vocational school model. Because most vocational schools have to have relationships with businesses in order for them to actually create, the businesses come and review the curriculum. They inform as to what should be taught because that creates the pathway for the students to then get the job. So my thought here is, do we think that, and you said it, Dr. Siajina, archaic, I believe in that word too. Do you think that our models that we have are even really providing the skills that we need in our economies? Because you have all these people with degrees in Zambia who voted the new government into power, right? One of their primary concerns was they didn't have jobs. But they're coming out of universities, like you say, brilliant people that we have at home coming out, there are no jobs. Because we're doing this, we've got another economist, and as to your point, Dr. Pwanga, guess what happens? I can't find a job, but because of my qualifications and people know that I can get a job outside of it, why am I going to stay in this place where I can't eat? I might as well leave because I need to feed my family. That's the mentality, right?
That is a very profound statement, and I agree 100% with you. So last time when I was in this group, I talked a lot about moringa. So I went home. I got to my dad's farm. My parents are deceased, so my younger brother is there. So I decided that I was going to go into farming, cattle raising. So I've been buying cattle and putting them at my dad's farm with my younger brother, caring for them. It is very difficult to manage your farm from afar. And not only that, to go into business with a brother.
Can you say amen?
So, and my wife has been kind of, in a way, frustrated with me because I keep thinking about these animals. I mean, they have multiplied a whole lot. So, I've been talking about land, and just a few days ago, I was able to, we had a breakthrough. We have acquired quite a hefty number of hectares. So I'm going to extract myself from my dad's farm to my own farm. Now, I'm gonna shut up in a minute. So in my role, I have been asked and appointed to, as of this coming spring, summer, I am going to be Associate Vice President for Internationalization on our campus. I accepted that. The reason why I accepted that is I wanted to make sure that through this role, I'll be able to connect South Chile with Zambia. So I've had some discussions with the University of Zambia to form a partnership, specifically in the vet medicine and crop management. There are many retired vet medicine doctors who would like to go for tourism. While they are there, they give lectureships to villages. I'm not talking about doing it just in town, but way out in the village. Because villagers, those farmers, are lacking knowledge to manage their animals. So that's one of the passion I have, and that connection between our university, we have an agriculture school, and the University of Zambia. I'm working with Dr. Manza.
We can do better than that.
Yeah, to tag on to what he's saying. But anyway, I have to go back to what I said earlier, creativity, to keep the students, or at whatever level, very smart and they can come up with things. So like just recently, I had my students were talking about pollution and stuff. So I said, okay, I want you to create, I want you to see anything around the house or your place, whatever, that you're gonna throw away. So create something new with whatever you're gonna throw away. And it was amazing the kind of products they came up with. I'm like, damn, if this were all the students, they might come up with something real creative and actually sell it. So it goes to that creativity to me. We need to nurture that and make anybody, all students, come up with their own ideas so they can be self-employed. They can be self-employed. So that's my creativity.
Can I add on that? Because I think you're hitting such an important nail on the head. At our organization, we've had about, I'd say, a dozen graduates from UNZA in the past 2 years. And the only ones who are fully employed are the ones who are now working for our organization. So that's the state of Zambia right now. UNZA graduates, CPU graduates are not getting jobs. So to just build on what you're saying is that's why we have to build entrepreneurship. We have to build creative thinking. We have to build innovative thinking into everything that we do so that even our UNZA graduates are also thinking with that mentality, what am I going to take my degree and go do, as opposed to waiting at home for the job to come.
And my other take is really the way in which I see the future with COVID having changed. It should have changed the mindset of a lot of countries, particularly in the developing world, particularly in Africa and so forth, with regards to what can we do, what skills can we actually leverage, and what things do we need to emphasize. For example, I'll give a case of basically the development of the COVID vaccine. There are many ways in which to develop. Thankfully, I've had the experience of, I've worked in biotech as well as the pharmaceutical industry. I know we're capable in Africa of producing at least the simplest type of vaccine, which is simply an attenuated vaccine, basically kill a vaccine and just kill COVID and produce a vaccine from that. The fact that we've been unable to, none of the countries in Africa have been able to actually come up with their own vaccine, whereas if you look around the world, if you went on any site, you'd basically see that there are at least 50 countries that are developing their own vaccines and have decided we're going to do something about it. And the reason I'm saying this is not just about COVID, but it's about trying to now focus your skills, focus your education system to what is needed, critical needs of nations. And that's the same as, for example, in Zambia, we produce copper. But what's the point of producing copper when we know that it's the most critical component to a green economy, and yet we can't produce even a working generator? That needs to change. Our engineering curriculum at UNZA should be teaching those skills, applied skills. You should be tested on whether you can produce a transistor. You should be educated on how to basically produce a working turbine, a working mining compactor, working excavator. All those things, all those critical skills are what a person needs to be able to learn. And these need to be focused, narrowed down to what a country basically needs. That's my take at least.
So Dr. Soneka, I love what you're saying, so I'm going to ask you another question because this is a diaspora conversation. So the question for us is, what can we do to attack that very thing that you're saying as, because I think there's enough brain power in this room to, as I said at the beginning, we're not going to wait for this government to get a clue, right? It's really about what can we do. So for all of you, it's more so to your point, which I think is fantastic, is what can we do and what should we be doing as we walk out of here to build what you're saying into actionable things. In terms of, something tech, so what does that look like? Probably is my question. What does that look like? What does us creating something to inform and kind of come and question that with the government, with other people in the diaspora, what does that look like?
I think on a simple level, create collaborations. For example, with the institutions that you're either connected with or have the ability to connect with. For example, my connection with Mercer and Emory, the vaccine group at Emory, means that they are willing to basically, for example, at Mercer, they always ask for students they always have the ability to actually take in students, international students, just as Dr.
Just Ray will find.
Just as Dr. Ray alluded to actually bring in students, international students who can actually acquire these skills, improve their understanding of a critical subject, and then be able to apply it in their nations. And that is something that, unfortunately for me, when I approached my fellow Zambians about these opportunities, I had no response. But my fellow Africans, such as the Ghanaians that I had in my school, were able to find students through collaborations through their universities, and now they have a constant pipeline. Relationships such as those are the ones we need to build on, and also encourage our own nationals that there are opportunities such as these, and these are opportunities that you need to embrace and take on.
We have a few last questions, maybe?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to apologize. My name is Lover. I'm not Zambian. I mentioned it earlier.
Yes, you are.
Okay, freedom assistance. So I'm going to give you the punchline, then I'm going to ask that question. Based on what I shared with you guys, this is about stealing and cheating. Okay, so let's start that there. What I also didn't tell you is what I do for a living, and that's going to be very important to the comment I'm going to make, and it is a question. So I run operations for a group called Front Door. You've never heard of it, don't worry. We run a bunch of home service brands. If you own a home, then you've heard of American Home Shield, right? HSA. You have me, you just don't know you have me, trust me. Because that's a home service company, a home warranty company, that fixes your home systems. Air conditioner, refrigerator, all those other things. I manage relationships with over 60,000 technicians around the United States, all 50 states, Hawaii to Maine. Do you know which skill set is in most shortage in America? Plumbing, HVAC, right? I mean, you know that, right? It's pretty much the skilled trades. We have all these computer engineers, right? Too many. My humble opinion, not many, right? But when your fridge breaks, you still need one of my 60,000 people to come in and fix it, right? So let's just be real about that. Yeah, I've got technology that can get into their home and yada. 8 out of 10 times, you're going to need somebody who's skilled to come in and fix it, right? That is the biggest gap we have in America today, from a skill today. So, to my point of stealing and cheating, I know my business is at risk unless I can find replacements. Because the average age of a skilled trade person in America today is 54 years old. You can graduate college, high school, at 18 and have a base salary of $45,000 as an HVAC technician. So you really smart people out in education, knowing that we can multi-track, we can get the doctors trained, and we can get the technicians trained. Like, what are the actions and activities Zambia should be thinking about to do both? Because the future is America. That is, we'll have a lot of doctors, but back to Dr. Ray's point, you may not have enough vets for the cows. Right? That's the future. And I'll close on another future. Ghana, the president of Ghana, about 3 years ago, committed to give each district $1 million to build a new factory and operate a new factory. Each district. Okay. Do you know less than 50% of the districts were able to build factories in 3 years? You know why? No skill, right? We have 85% penetration of literacy. That's not the issue. They had not enough engineers. We had a shitload of engineers who could go out there and do it. But the guys who run the machines in the factories were not skilled and trained. That is a picture of the future. So, to my question, what should Zambia be thinking about to be able to multi-track, to not be in this future?
I think start internships at secondary school level. I think once a student is at secondary school, I remember when I was at secondary school in Zambia, at Manali, you could actually have the agri-science track. You had a TD track where you actually started some form of internships. If you did TD, you had a chance to actually do an internship with an architectural firm and so forth. Those things went away, and those things need to be enhanced. Those things need to be brought back and at secondary school level and continued in each curriculum every single year of a person's curriculum throughout their undergraduate. That needs to be something that needs to be put in right away.
So that would also include curriculum. Yeah, so the curriculum would have to be enhanced or, changed so that they can accommodate. Because I don't know, you said it was taken out. Do you know why they took it out? I'm not sure. But anyway, curriculum.
I think it was the expense and lack of teachers, and so in a lot of schools, there are a few schools such as Hillcrest and David Conde that still have it, but most schools, such I know that Munali that was taken out.
All right, before you're gonna go, Susanna, I just want to add, I got got corrected by Chita, who's there to do that. I just want to make sure that we keep our responses to 1 minute because there are lots more questions, right? So go ahead.
I was going to say, going back to our a bit of cheating and stealing, but I would also push it up. I'm not Zambian, clearly, right? But
We can't tell.
thank you. I am honorary as well. Afraid I didn't say I am honorary.
Nelson Mandela says, we respond to Zambians by the way they respond to our country.
Thank you. I would push it out to this diaspora group. As we think about investment opportunities, how do we create learning opportunities and diversification of the economy? I feel like, no offense, diaspora, but so much investment is going into real estate or farming. Are there other opportunities, and how do we link learning opportunities? Anyone who knows me knows that my big dream is to open a microbrewery in Zambia. I love my Mosi, don't get me wrong, but like I need an IPA sometimes. I just want a good IPA made in Zambia, right?
You'll be very successful.
Thank you, I hope so. And going to cheating and stealing though, I made a new friend this year, Dr. Mono, I'm seeing him here, who at his community college, their students are learning how to make beer through an actual microbrewery, right? So it's not that there's economic stimulation there by having a microbrewery, but there's a whole education piece to it. And it doesn't always have to be centered around a vice, right, like alcohol, but I would push you as the diaspora to be thinking as you're making investments in the country, and this was a question I was actually going to pose Dr. Luco whenever I have a chance to chat with him, is how do we shift the mindsets as the diaspora in how we invest, and how do we create more diverse opportunities and learning opportunities for the youth?
Okay, Dr. Sherry.
That's beautiful. That's gorgeous. I really think my son, who is in here, he's seated in here. I remember seeing him as a little boy and for giving me an opportunity, fella, for me to sit here and share some things. And I've been sharing with you. So I really would like to have more conversation with you on this land that we are talking about. In terms, in Zambia, we have to demonstrate. Once we've demonstrated, other people are going to mimic what works. So, although I'm talking about cattle, and there's this land that I see, I'm also looking at farming in terms of solar. I go to Zambia, the ZESCO lights are out in one part of Zambia, another. I think if we do that by growing solar in Zambia and teaching young people, that's the mindset that we will be exporting to our own country and make sure that the country continues to grow and expand in terms of technology. This energy thing is powerful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sherry. Go ahead, question.
Yes, I have a question about how can we, as a diaspora, actually influence the government or in being able to change the educational curriculum there? Because if we said that they did have a curriculum that they implemented in 2016, then how can we as a diaspora be able to help them? So do you have any ideas on how we can do that here?
Then Frida, where are you? Okay. Connections, okay? Connections to people who do have connections to that next level. And it's something we can propose, maybe we can put together like a proposal of what we think as diaspora, and then submit it for their review and for their comments. You know, at least something to start with. That's my take.
Anybody else?
So through these partnerships, the university here partners with, by the way, if you go to Zambia now, see how many universities there are. They are propping up everywhere. So if they put me in this internationalization position, I am going to flood our partnerships with universities in Zambia to trickle down to the classroom in such a way that we also show some weaknesses and strengths of the current curriculum in Zambia, so that where there are weaknesses, those are the opportunities for the country to grow. They will listen. In fact, with this new government, I'm so glad, and just a friend of mine was appointed as a permanent secretary. And so if we kind of tap into people that we know, we can make change. We can change and help our country grow. And that is the passion that I had for Zambia. That first trip 4 years ago when I went, it completely changed me. I am a person who resides in Zambia and resides in America. And my wife knows. She has already drafted how the house is going to look like in Zambia on that farm.
Thank you, Dr. Siajina. We have some more questions, so go ahead.
Okay.
I'll
go ahead, and thank you again for setting this up, Dr. Frida. I am from Southern Rhodesia, and I just wanted to talk about solutions. Solutions, because I had to catapult and come back to the moment we're in right now. I am from the workforce development profession, which combines workforce development and economic development. And all of the things we're talking about right now are things that I've lived for the past 7 years. And talking about how we solve this issue, you need what I think is called a local workforce board, similar to what was set up in 2014 here by Barack Obama, a bipartisan law that has a pulse on what's going on in the country as far as what is needed. We do not want to just throw out majors. Don't go to psychology. Why? Tesla is here trying to build a factory. They need electricians, they need gigafactory associates and what have you. So there needs to be someone who coordinates that conversation so it's not happening in silence. So I just wanted to put that out there, but there's a lot more to that, but in the sense of time, I will not.
Great solution.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think I would like to go back to where you talked about the Zambian system, the education system, not really serving the needs of the country in terms of the people that we are producing, in terms of the skills that we are equipping the graduates with. I think one of the major problems with that is that we are taught, first of all, the whole system of trying to make some people get out, you just start for an exam. And once you pass that, you go to the next level. If you fail it, that's a problem you are starting, which is a very bad waste of brain. Because there are some people who you may be teaching wrong stuff to. For instance, somebody wants to be a farmer, and you are teaching them history, you are teaching them sciences that they are not interested in. Most likely they are not going to be successful. But later on, they may be successful when they realize, oh, I need this. So I think the whole system has got to be really dismantled and put together in a way that is beneficial to the country. And two, we seem to teach for jobs. Oh, you learn this so you can get a job, which is not even there right now. And then at some point, you find yourself with this skill, okay, I'm supposed to be working in this particular job, but you haven't been taught to think more widely, like I think it's Dr. Mendapole who mentioned the fact that we end up on the scale, we end up on the understanding part. We know how to do things, but we don't really create things. And I think we have to have that mindset. And that's where I like what Roy is saying about partnerships. Well, we have to form partnerships. We have to be in continuous process of learning, Because even for us faculty, we keep learning. All this stuff we have, seminars, forums, and they are designed for us to keep learning. So these other people should also be given the opportunity to learn. You can't employ an instructor and just let him there. Well, they grow static, they grow stale. What they are teaching you is what they used to know, but it's not really in alignment with what is needed right now. So I think there are quite a number of problems that we need to solve. And the last point I'd like to make is, unlike the systems here, where we are so connected to the business community as faculty, in Zambia we are not. We are so detached from the business community. We see that's why we are getting the people to come and work for us, but we see them more like enemies or something. So we don't connect with them. They should be in a position where they are actually learning what are the requirements in the field. As they go through, they are learning those skills. And I think it's Dr. Swale who mentioned that earlier on in our educational system, we had things like metalwork, we had things like woodwork, where people were actually learning these skills. But as we went along, we started dismantling them. You go to most of these secondary schools, they don't even have a simple lab to do simple chemical experiments. How do you expect them all of a sudden, once they get into the job situation, to learn or to know how to do this thing? And to have that knowledge that they can do it. You look at most of these universities, they've got such arrangements with these big companies. For instance, if we talk about ExxonMobil, talk about Shell and so on, you will see that they've got relationships with universities. Those who are learning chemical engineering, they are using the real chemicals and using the real equipment that is being used in the industry. So we have to have the same thing. There is no point why we should have the mining industry, and yet we don't even know how to use any of their equipment. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, let me end it there.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Before we close out, I just want to literally answer this. Another question? Another question? Do we have another question?
I just like to add, I think this is a really, really important debate, and I'd just like to put it to us in the room to actually start walking the talk now.
Yeah.
And I just want to give this as a quick example. I have two daughters. They both tried the university, and they both came to me. My eldest daughter came to me and said, she was doing social justice or something. She said, Mom, I don't want to do that. I want to be a tattoo artist. And I said, well, go and do an internship and see what it's like. And now she's actually one of the best tattoo artists in Denver. And by the way, I hate tattoos. It's not about me. It's not about me. It's about listening to the kids and listening to our inner kid as to what really is needed. Whether we really would love to be able to fix fridges, or whatever it is. My youngest daughter adores horses, but she loves seeing people with mental disabilities or learning disabilities be empowered by a horse. You don't learn that in university. It's experiential. We need to, the creativity point you made, we are born innovative and creative. Education tends to limit it and sometimes snuff it out. What we need to understand is the gifts we're actually born with, and nurture. You used the word nurture. Nurture them to come forward and allow us as adults to listen to those passions. And I mean, start today with our own kids and our own communities, because then you can actually apply it to Zambia or whatever your friends all around the world. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I will share a story. Share a story before we close out, which has been, and then I would like a really strong round of applause for our panel, because I think they've done an amazing job kind of just feeding into this dialogue that we've been having. So my 2 decades in the for-profit school business doing trades, I have had one of the biggest markets we have, and you're talking about entrepreneurship, right? One of the biggest markets we have is people returning into the workforce from prison, right? And what would happen is, if you know something about HVAC, somebody's going into somebody's house. So a felony will not do you any good, right? Felony will not do you any good. However, that's something they can get. And the mindset would be, I get students coming to me very upset about the fact that you guys signed me up into this program, I got this loan and blah, blah, blah. My mind shift happened. You know, electricians, same thing. I'd have electricians that get and would be working with admissions, if you've ever worked with admissions, because admissions are about numbers, and so you have to do all this thing. So my mind shift happened when I realized, the one thing about America is, guess what? You can't get a job with a family, but you can make a company. To Dr. Siadina's point, you can create your company in 30 minutes online, and you can incorporate, and you can start doing business as your company as a felon, walking into people's home. Nobody's going to ask you. And so when students started to come to me and started to complain, I'd say, why are you trying to be an employee? Be your own boss. And that is the mind shift when you talk about, because we are teaching to all your clients. We're teaching, we are creating zombies. We create zombies for the system. And what we have to do is realize that we have to start really building skills in people, financial literacy. You know, those are the skills that help people to actually succeed in life. But having said all this, I definitely want to thank you. Let's give them a great. Chita is going to give us instructions on what we're going to do next.
Thank you all for being a very engaging audience. I apologize for not being able to get to all of you, but I promise there'll be more dialogue after lunch. And I also encourage you to continue the dialogues among yourselves. And if you're sitting at a table, you've had conversations with this group during lunch, maybe sit at the table and continue the dialogue.